Welcome back, and now we're getting to the second half of our review. And to start with the most memorable quotes I had, "We shall never surrender." Also, wars are not won by evacuations. Sing home doesn't help us get there from Commander Bolton. Also, men my age dictate this war. Why should we be allowed to send our children to fight it from Mr. Dawson? Then finally, we shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We will not surrender. To you overall, what were some of the quotes that you kind of felt as though were the main standouts?
Yeah, this one from the blind man. It's like he's like, well done, lads. He's like, all we did was survive. It's like, well, that's enough, right?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, that's
I feel
amazing.
like that was like so much of these stories from these individuals is that just doing what they can to survive is like the biggest thing you could do, right? At the end of the day, I just want to survive. Um, yeah, the line um, the line whenever the commander has the binoculars and sees the boats coming, when he's like, what is it? And you're like, oh man, this is like U-boats showing up on the shore, ready to start
Mhm.
destroying these guys. It's like, no, it's home, and just it just really kind of. And I love how it's like it's just home, like home is here, right? And just just that longing for some kind of peace in the
Yeah.
midst of the chaos that they've experienced. So yeah, I wouldn't really say it's a really heavy. I think Nolan's had other films, and I think this is not the case, with every film that he does, but I think he's had other films where there was more dialogue than this one had. Right, there's a little more talking involved.
I was
With
gonna
this one,
say that this one,
yeah,
there was an absence. It almost was like
hmm
there was more communication in an indirect way, like in a
yes,
nonverbal way. You could just
yes,
feel things through the body language. But with
yes.
this compared to other films, there was really an
hmm
absence of the dialogue.
like the scene when the soldier is just stripping his gear and just goes straight into the ocean, right? And like obviously to take his life, and it's like, man, like just again, it's all about I think you just said it perfectly. The body language is what really kind of helps drive the film, like the fear in their eyes whenever they're about to get shot down, the joy in their faces whenever they have a moment where they are relieved from their suffering, right? I
Yeah,
mean, just that was really kind of the heart and driving force of the film. It wasn't like a moment where they're like, oh, that really kind of drove home what we're going for, right? So yeah.
absolutely. And now getting to what did you like the most about the storyline? To me, just how it builds upon the tension and fear through, like we mentioned, the eerie sound and accurately depicting how haunting it was for just like anyone willing to step into the position of the battle fatigue soldiers. I thought was done just so accurately, in an accurate fashion. To you, like what particular element of this storyline did you kind of like the most?
Man, the balance of time, like, I mean, it starts off. I remember first time I watched it, I was like, okay, what does it mean by 1 week? Okay, a day, an hour, and when you kind of like are really kind of able to piece it together, and you see these elements happening all throughout the film, it's like, oh, this is again Nolan doing his masterclass and like balancing and playing with the moments of time, right?
Yeah,
Um, and it just I mean, it's a driving force for his films. It will always be a driving force for his films. And that really kind of intrigued me on the second watch, right? Of like how he was able to really balance that out and make it work and make it. I mean, obviously, if you know how he if you know how he ticks, and you're going to pick it up, like
instantly.
yeah, you'll be able to pick it up fairly quickly, right? But untrained eyes will be so lost in this film,
Yeah,
and probably in other films that he does too. God bless her. My wife does not like Christopher Nolan films. She's like,
really.
I don't want to have to think about it.
This
she'll
is
get
the
down.
first time I've ever heard you say
Yeah,
that.
like she will get down on like the Batman films, but like if she has to sit there and think through what she is watching, she's just like, I'm good. I'm out of here. So she's like, it's like he's just so weird. Like,
That's
so, so usually I can get away with seeing Nolan films in theaters by myself because I don't have to worry about. planning a date night for that one. So, but no, yeah, I think just the elements of time, and just seeing how like how these moments that we've already witnessed are then kind of taken from the advantage point of the person who sees them
Mhm.
after we've seen it, right?
Yeah,
So because like obviously the quickest one of them all is the airplane sequence, right? Where they're in the air, like they're the ones moving the fastest through everything that's going on the storyline, right? So we're seeing these things kind of play out, but then like Nolan almost kind of slows it down towards the
yeah,
end, right? I like I mentioned that moment when you see the planes like at different moments of time, but it's the same airplane. Like you says, oh no, and then boom, he
yeah,
gets shot down. So,
man.
yeah, just being able to finagle that and do that, it really kind of helps drive the story home. Just to how everything is connected. Like it's not told like in a moment. And I even saw somebody say this, like if you put this film in chronological order, it probably does not hold up as well as it could, right?
That is true.
Because because when you have it kind of scattered a little bit, then you're held by the element of like, oh man, what's going to happen here? Like you're having to kind of like led along the rest of the way.
Yeah, that is an accurate point. And looking at Tom Hardy's performance, because it's interesting. Like Nolan, he does this thing that other directors do, where he'll
Yeah.
bring in like the people he's familiar with, and he likes to use them
Yes.
up for a lot of films.
Hmm.
What were your thoughts on his performance, and also like looking back at some of the other actors Christopher Nolan has used so much? Like, who are the other ones that kind of stand out to you in terms of the people that he's used regularly and like really work well with his style and direction for his movies.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we could point to so many directors. Like, I mean, obviously, you look at the Scorsese. Well, it's going to be De Niro,
Hmm.
it's going to be DiCaprio,
Yeah,
it's going to be Pacino. Like, he's going to like that's kind of like his big three, right? Like,
yeah,
those are the ones he's always going to do something with, right? Um, and it's just like with Nolan, obviously Tom Hardy is a big factor of that. Cillian Murphy is a big part of that.
hmm,
Michael Caine,
Michael Caine.
even though he wasn't in this film, obviously a huge part of that.
Yeah.
I'm trying. The actor who plays the commander, um, Kenneth Branagh, like
Oh
he was
yeah,
in. Yeah, he was in Tenet, right?
yeah,
Trying to think about some other ones that stand out on top of my head. I mean, obviously he's done. He did, of course, the Batman films with Christian Bale, but then he also did the Prestige with Christian Bale as well, right? So yeah, I think yeah, when you have people who know what you want and are able to communicate
that's
your
the
story.
key. I think some
It
actors would not. I think some actors would be so confused with what you want.
right, right. But also too, I mean, you think about how many times, like, let's take a look at Interstellar, right? Like obviously Interstellar hit the right time for Matthew McConaughey because that's when his career took a whole
Oh yeah,
different shift,
it
right?
was a peak. Yeah, it was a different peak.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at that point in time, he's coming off of True Detective, or he's either coming off of or going into True Detective, right? But
I think
it's
he
all
was
taking
going
place around,
into.
yeah,
Yeah,
taking place around that same time, right? So his career just like took off on a whole other level. But there's also a point too of like Nolan kind of bringing in kind of these relatively unknown individuals, and then they become like
yeah.
stars, right? Like I had never heard of Cillian Murphy until I watched Batman Begins.
Oh
Just
me, yeah,
straight up,
me too. Me
yeah.
too. I never even.
And obviously, this is a byproduct of like just not knowing. But like Christian Bale, I had no idea who he was till Batman Begins, right? And but I think maybe, I think that like took his career to a new level, right?
Yeah,
Because it was a blockbuster film, and obviously no one. I mean, Bale had done many other things before that, but that was just different, man. That's a different, tapping into a different source of fandom when you are playing a superhero, a comic superhero like Batman, right? But yeah, I mean, he just has a way of like kind of pulling in these people and then seeing it really kind of blast off in a really cool way. And yeah, but I mean, Tom Hardy, obviously, he's a mainstay staple in in Nolan's films. But I'll say this, man, like I highly anticipate like to see this cast coming up for Oppenheimer and how this is going to play out. This might this I think this is the one cast that probably rivals. the cast from Inception, because I would say up to this
I
point,
mean,
that's probably this.
we might as well just talk about like what are your
Yeah.
do you have high expectations for Oppenheimer?
Oh, I mean, I do. I mean, because I know what to expect from Christopher Nolan, right? And
Yeah.
I think just seeing some of this kind of behind the scenes footage of like what he has done. It's like so I've never seen. I don't think I've ever seen a major motion picture in IMAX. I'm going to see this movie in IMAX because I want
Same.
to see it
Same.
in all of its glory, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I carry the expectation that this is going to be it. I anticipated seeing kind of where it falls for me on the grand scale of like Nolan films I've taken over that I've taken in over the last 20 years of my life, right?
Yeah.
I want to see like how he brings this cast together with
It's like
Cillian
for me, like
Murphy,
when I see a
right?
when I see a
Robert
new Jordan,
Downey,
yeah, when I
yeah,
see a new Jordan Peele film, I'm anticipating it obviously highly because I know what he does, what his previous work
yeah,
is. But I'm also thinking like, where is this going to rank in his catalog?
for
It's just
sure.
natural to think because you just like, can he outdo himself? And so I think that's the
He
same
outdid
thing that
himself.
translates with Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, and but unfortunately, I think one thing. Yeah, we talked about this whenever we reviewed um well, Nope, when we did Nope,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
like even though I think we come away like really kind of like fascinated by it. Obviously it was another film that Peele did. I think he did well, and I think it could be one. Looking back on it now, I think could really be one of those ones that really ages well. The
yes,
longer it's out, but I still left that movie. I was like, man, but it wasn't Get Out.
yeah.
It wasn't Get Out, right?
Sometimes like when you jump out the gate with something that is just
Right.
so just
Hmm.
a cylinder in every
Right.
category, it's just tough to reach that peak again.
It's so tough, man. It's
But
so
Nope is
tough.
really good. Nope is still really good.
Yeah,
It's
Nope
just
is good. And, yeah, even Us is a good film,
yeah.
but it's still not Get Out. Like at this point, it's all under Get Out for me, right? Um, and with Nolan though, because he and kind of go back to what we talked about earlier, you know, you can almost kind of have several categories for his stuff, right? I think you have kind of your espionage, like saving something. So that's like Inception, Tenet, all
Yeah.
that stuff kind of falls into that,
Same
right?
category.
Right. Yeah, you have like your superhero category with the Batman trilogy. Then you have kind of like your science fiction. Yeah, we have like
Interstellar.
Interstellar, all that stuff, right? And then now you have a category with historical moments, right? With Dunkirk going into Oppenheimer, right? So he started to dip his well. I mean, obviously, the elements of his films are all over every one of those films, right? You're going to get what you're going to get there, right? Um, but at the end of the day, there is a versatility to his films that maybe some other
Yeah.
guys don't have, right? And I
I
think,
was literally, and I'm gonna be honest, because like Scorsese is like my top
mhm,
favorite director overall. One of my top favorite directors. I have to say, I have to add Nolan in there. I've read so many Nolan films, but it's interesting to me. Like you talk about guys like him and Quentin Tarantino.
yeah,
The thing with Christopher Nolan that I think just makes him just so different, like you said, you literally can box his movies in different categories,
mhm,
different brackets. You can't really do that with a lot of directors because some directors they just are comfortable with the lane they're in. And I think with Nolan, that's he just continues to like test himself in a way. He continues to branch out. He never, to me, Nolan is never comfortable with what he enjoys. He always wants to see like what's the next big spectacle I can reach.
yeah. And that's the thing too is like he's not just churning out films to churn out films, right?
Yeah,
He's actually, I mean, let's see, Tenet came out was it 2020? We're 3 years removed from Tenet, right? Before that, Dunkirk was 17, so that's 3 years before that. I mean, so it looks like he's like on every 3 year trajectory,
it's a
right?
three
So
year
I think
cycle. Yeah,
yeah, I think Batman, Dark Knight Rises,
twenty
that was 12. Yeah,
2012, I
so
think. Wow, and
so
Dark
20,
Knight was '08. Dark Knight was
oh
'08.
wait, yeah. Now,
Yeah,
obviously, I think that was probably delayed a little bit due to Ledger and all the stuff that
yeah,
happened with
yeah,
him, right? But you also had Inception right between that, right? So you had
yeah.
Inception. Yeah, 2 years Inception, 2 years Dark Knight Rises, a couple years. Interstellar. Now you have 3 years, and you have Dunkirk. Another 3 years, Tenet. Another 3 years, you have Oppenheimer, right? So he's not just churning out stuff just for the sake of it. I mean, even Scorsese, he doesn't drop a movie every year, right?
Mhm.
Um, but
He's dropping one, Killers of the Flower Moon, which he hasn't
yeah,
done in a while. He hasn't done a
mhm,
movie in a while, but he takes his time as well.
for sure, for sure. And also, I mean, I think Scorsese also has the ticking clock against him right now,
Yeah,
right? I
that
mean,
is true.
he's not exactly the youngest man. And the good thing about Nolan is that Lord willing, we get at least another 2 decades of his films
Yeah,
stacked up, right?
that's true.
Which would be phenomenal, right? And to be able to see how he plays it out, continuing on and continue telling story after story after story, right? Should be really interesting to see how that plays itself out.
Yeah, definitely. And now getting to our next topic, 10 years from now, do you still think this will be watchable and intriguing? This is an interesting one because I think it's split in half. I think for the
Yeah.
really diehard Nolan fans, they'll still watch it to appreciate the storytelling. It's not going to be that instant one you go to. Like me and Savon, we talk about how directors have certain movies like, okay, those are the instant go tos. This one is going to be like in the middle of the catalog. Um, I guess I would say it's partially yes, partially yes, because I think for casual moviegoers, they're not
Mhm.
gonna just instantly
Yeah,
want to watch this. But how do you think this will age another decade from
yeah. I think it will age well. I think it will age well. But I think to your point, I think you're also right. Like, okay, let's. Now that I'm recalling the times I first watched it, so I remember watching that, and I remember watching 1917 right after that, right? Which, if you put the two up against each other, Nolan, I love you, man. I'm riding hard for you, but 1917 is a better film, right? Because and mainly because like that the whole one shot montage of that film is insane. If for those who are listening, um, if you have not seen how they rehearsed the scene where the soldiers running through the battlefield, YouTube it right now
now?
and just watch the spectacle of how they were able to film that in one shot. It is phenomenal,
Yeah,
right? Um, so yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I think if somebody's like a World War II movie buff, it's going to be on the watch list. It has to be on the
it
watch
has
list,
to.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
This is
Um,
one of the top war films we've had in a while.
for sure, right? Um, but but yeah, I mean, don't come expecting it to be like this big spectacle, like a Saving Private Ryan or any other war film has come out. It's just not. I mean, there's moments of action and moments of like explosions and bombs and all that stuff,
You gotta wait for it.
right?
This
But
is
you
the one
gotta
you
wait
gotta wait
for it,
for.
right? Because like it's not just here just to drop, quite literally drop bombs on you, right? It's here to tell a story, a elongated story, and even though it's not necessarily a long film. It's
No, it's
probably
not.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
an
don't have
hour
this in front of me.
40. I think it's like an
Yeah, but
hour
it
40.
might be one of Nolan's shortest films he has. I think, I mean, especially compared to Oppenheimer, which is going to be 3 hours long.
And I think
But
that was intentional. I think that was
yeah,
honestly intentional from. I think Nolan was like, I know they're not gonna. This is not gonna be something they're used to. I need to
mhm,
make this shorter than what my average film would be.
yeah. So it's going to make the list for some people. You're going to have your Nolan fans who are going to watch his catalog from here till Kingdom Come, right? You're going to have your war buffs who are going to really want to see kind of that story be told out.
Yeah,
And then you might have like just your casual observer who just might pop it in and be like, "Yeah, this ain't for me." On to the next one, right? So
yeah,
we'll find out.
yeah. That's definitely true. And I had a bonus question as
Yeah.
well because obviously we talk so the whole catalog that Christopher Nolan has is something that is so easy to dissect and analyze a lot. But my question was how many classic films does Christopher Nolan have? And I've been like going back and forth with this the last few days. I went with five because I think The Dark Knight is definitely one.
Mm,
Inception, The Prestige,
yeah.
Memento, and Batman Begins. I think those are five really classic films. I would have Interstellar right out of that list because I
Yeah.
think there are parts where Interstellar is too long and it does
Mhm.
miss just kind of that sense of purpose near the latter end of the film. Obviously, a very good film. I still rewatch it at any point, but it just kind of missed the mark for me. To you, like looking back at his catalog, how many classic films would you say Nolan has?
Yes, I think I would probably go with I'll probably go with three. I think as far as like that are critically and universally acclaimed, and you got The Dark Knight. Um, Again, just storytelling, acting, everything about that film is perfect. There's just nothing about that film I do not like. Um, listen, we're just throwing up time here, right? Like um, hearing Aaron Eckhart talk about the scene they filmed that him and Heath Ledger filmed in the hospital when Dent got blown to pieces, and the Joker comes in there. Like he said, there was nothing written for that scene. That
Mm,
was all just like Heath
like
doing
impromptu.
his thing. Yeah, just impromptu, and and of course Aaron was just playing off of Heath and what he was doing as a Joker, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, just that was just the perfect storm of everything that could happen in a superhero film, and it will forever be the top. It will be the greatest thing that's ever been created when it comes to superhero genre. I don't see anything topping it. I mean, even listen, I love Endgame. I think Endgame is probably one of the most emotionally driven films I've ever seen, right? But there's just something about The Dark Knight and this the way that it's shot, the maturity of it, everything just makes it a really special film. Um, Inception is special, number one, because the cast is amazing. Leo, Tom Hardy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I mean, just keep stacking up this cast, and I will put that cast against almost any film that Nolan's done, right? And dealing with the elements of time, dealing with how big and expansive the world is in that movie. Kind of the espionage like flair of it. It's just a really fantastic film, right? Um, and then let's see, third I'm going with The Prestige, and number one because The Prestige holds a special place in my heart because it gripped me at a young age. I was 16 years old when I first watched it, and I actually remember watching it. And so, for those of you who are watching at home, I watched it on an iPod screen that was like that big. So, and literally, I'll never forget. Like again, another classic opening scene, right, where the film opens up and you see all these top hats spread across the field, and then Michael Caine starts going to his whole thing where he's doing the disappearing bird trick, and then all of a sudden you see Hugh Jackman drowning in a water tank. Like, what is going on
Man,
here, man? like,
jarring.
um, but again, I get just another fantastic cast, man.
Yeah.
Bale, Jackman, Scarlett Johansson, Michael Caine. Shout out to Andy Serkis and his a little montage in there. I mean, it's just that will always hold a special place for mine. I think I don't know if you call it a cult classic, but I think it's just a classic Nolan film.
Yeah.
And like anybody I ever talked to who is a serious movie person, they're like, "Oh yeah, Inception," I'm sorry, I was like, "Oh yeah,
Prestige.
The Prestige." Yeah, that's one.
It's
That's
one of
one.
those, man. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely one of those. And I'm thinking of also the fact that um, I think there are movies of his that can continue to kind of grow up in those ranks. Because for me, like, I'm always conflicted about just where the Dark Knight Rises is at, because
Yeah.
it's so interesting to me. Like a very good, it's not a classic, a very good film though, and it's I think it always will have that scar of following the Dark Knight. Like when you look
Yes.
back at a film like The Dark Knight Rises, I absolutely love that movie. I think Bane is incredible. He's so menacing. Anne Hathaway with what she does with Catwoman is so good. It's an amazing end to that trilogy. Like, how do you feel as though that movie kind of stands up even years later?
I mean, I think it stands up just fine. And again, it's just I know there's some Batman films that or some Batman fans I know who do not like that film at all. And I would say I think Pattinson's Batman film eclipsed it in a
I
way.
think so. I think so.
And again, and it's not to take anything away from it, but Do you remember when we
There's just
reviewed
too many
that?
memorable scenes in that Dark Knight Rises for me to say it's not good. There's just you if you go
Yeah,
back to it, it's just so many good ones. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's not a bad film. I mean, listen, I could stack up, you know, 10 Marvel movies at this point right now that are
yeah,
6 feet under the Dark Knight Rises,
for
right?
sure.
So,
Come on, like with what
uh,
some of the recent ones we've gotten. Come on, like that is a masterpiece comparison.
I know, right? And literally a masterpiece. But yeah, I mean, it's forever. It yeah, the Dark Knight Rises is forever scarred by the Dark Knight, right? And you look through all
It's a
throughout
curse.
cinema history that first one, man. Like like the I mean, obviously, like you look to the Godfather. That one's kind of like this is different. And I think the third one like can't bear the weight of two good movies on
Yeah,
top of his shoulders, right? So, but yeah, man. I mean, looking back, I mean, it will always be a movie that I won't like turn it on right now and watch it, right? But like my so my son right now, he is he we always ask these questions back and forth, right? He's a 3 year old. Obviously there's a lot of things that he can't watch right now. So he always asks me like, Daddy, what's your favorite movie? I'm like, oh, I really like the Batman movies. He's like, there are bad guys in there? I'm like, yeah, there's bad guys in there, lots of bad guys. Batman stops them, it's great. So like now when I was like, hey Cortland, what's your favorite movie? He's like, the Batman movie when I get older. So it's like it's already built into his psyche that he's gonna love the
he's gonna be
Batman when
listening
he
back to
gets
these
old.
episodes.
Man, my dad was right. My dad was right. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just I mean, again, it's just, I mean, even looking to some of the older Batman films, right? I mean, obviously there is
I think
a
even the Michael Keaton one is a
oh
phenomenal movie.
the Keaton ones have aged
Yeah,
so well. I really think
seriously.
they've aged really well, and I can't wait to see him in the Flash this weekend. I think it's
Yes.
gonna be a ton of fun. I can't wait to see that film.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, man, it's all about I mean, what are people longing for at that moment, right? And I think this next film that comes out in July, I think it's going to
Can't
be able
wait
to
for it.
set up something pretty significant, right? It might be able to pull in some people who otherwise might just kind of pan a Nolan film. So especially again with this cast that he is carrying, I think it's going to kind of pull in a whole different stratosphere. Like I can't wait to see how Robert Downey Jr. is in a Christopher Nolan film. Like I want to see
That's gonna be
how
fascinating.
a director like him really kind of pulls Downey Jr. into probably to hopefully like another tier or like an
Yeah.
Emily Blunt. How is that going to affect her? And of course, even like some of these characters, they like sometimes I'm like, I didn't even know this person was still acting anymore. Like Josh Hartnett, where has that
Same.
dude been for like 20 years, right? So, um, but
Nolan's
yeah,
bringing
man.
people back.
I mean, listen, he's resurrecting careers and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, man. Give that man his flowers.
Absolutely. Trent, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And like we mentioned, Oppenheimer next month. Can't wait to see what's gonna happen there, bro.
Yeah, you best believe there ain't gonna be no Barbie review on this podcast. It's gonna
No,
be
not at
Oppenheimer.
all. Oppenheimer.
That's right. Ain't gonna be no Barbie review on this podcast.
No.
Save on. If you want to go see a review on it, you can do it in your own time,
Bro. But
man.
July, man, make your reservations for Oppenheimer.
That's right.
Definitely.
That's right.
Well, that wraps it up for tonight. I'm host Wednesday Burns. This has been Full Scope. See you later.